Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Did the multi-numeric entries help solve the problem or not? Today's concluding installment of a story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. I saw this in subsequent videos that I forced myself to watch. Lisa seemed joyful as she entered her boss's office, happily calling him sir in almost every sentence. Yes, sir. What do you want, sir? Did you like it, sir? How she reacted to him made me ask myself how far she had allowed herself to go with this man. How much control did she allow him to have? Then it dawned on me, the night must have been so good, so much better than with me, that she stopped letting me have an intimate with her. In her mind, Eric damn well was her man, and I was, but what? I never gave up and never told her that she had permission to sleep with him. I wasn't her cuckold, but many people attach a label to any man whose wife has cheated. She betrays him, but the guilt and shame lie with him. Eric and Lisa openly humiliated me from the very beginning, and while playing some other videos, I heard him say, "Do it again." The worst thing was hearing her say that hellish word about me. Then there were other men. To ensure that the videos with the names of other men featured her, I looked at them. She was tasked with having an intim with future clients, current clients, and even some men who had nothing to do with her company. The three men who brought her together were friends of Eric. There were others too, black men, tall and short men, Hispanic, Japanese, and European businessmen. I did the math and discovered there were 58 different names in addition to Eric Wise. This idiot turned my wife into a corporate prostitute. I decided I'd had enough and turned off the laptop. What I saw was intimate and resembled an adult video, yet the thought that it was my wife and how she enjoyed desecrating her vile boss disgusted me. Finally, videos of her with several men showed me that she had changed into a different person voluntarily. Not once did she turn to me for help or advice, as if in 1 hour she swore allegiance to Eric Wise and washed her hands of me, as if I were yesterday's remnant. I saw everything I needed to see and never went back. How the hell some guys look forward to their wives sleeping with other men is beyond me, but I had a certain respect for them and their promiscuous wives. Why? Because unlike my wife, these women did not lie to their husbands. What cuckold couples did, they did together, willingly, and in the open air. I don't know how I managed to send my children to school and go to work. What was worse was seeing my wife come home and walk past me as if she hadn't slept with Eric, her vile boss. Most of the time she smelled clean, as if she had showered before coming home, but not the night she returned, smelling of another man's sweat. I talked to Katie about the video and what I saw. In a rare moment of empathy, she reached out to place her hand on mine, and I felt a reaction to it. Katie noticed me fidgeting and asked again if I was okay. She now held my hand with both of hers and looked at me in a way she never had before. "I know you and I met under terrible circumstances, Dave," she said. "Most likely, when this is all over, you'll try to forget about it all and about me. But you and I are members of a rare club." "Which one?" I answered, trying to calm my body, looking into Katie's eyes and listening to her slightly hoarse voice. I could barely hold on. "We were both hurt by the same two people," she replied. "I feel close to you. Please don't look at me like that." "How do I look at you?" I asked, afraid that she knew. "Like I have horns," she replied. "Wrong," I said. "I'm the one who's horny. I haven't had a night in almost 5 years. Oh, Dave, we need to do something about this. Who would have thought that the word we in a woman's mouth, when it comes to intim, acts like an intimate pill?" "Katie," I said, trying not to laugh, "you just made this sad and miserable man feel alive again. Like a man." She blushed and almost removed her hands from mine, but instead, she squeezed my hand tightly, leaned across the table, and kissed me. "We had a night, and yes, you are better than my husband." "Thanks, but I saw the video," I replied. "I didn't say that to boost your ego, Dave. I meant it." "Well, thank you. My male ego is beaten." I stopped short of saying 5 years. As for Eric, he lost my respect a long time ago. Before we separated, I realized that he is a man of small character and personality. You understand that Eric isn't stupid, don't you? A selfish and narcissistic one. Yes, the fact that he slept with my wife for 5 years and abused me while doing it confirmed his status as an idiot. Not to mention the fact that he took advantage of a woman under stress because her child was dying. I hate him so much, she said. I hate him. It was clear that Katie hated her husband, but I think she hated herself for choosing him as her mate, for giving him the power that he used to manipulate women like my wife. Let it out, sister, I egged her on. And I hate your damn wife, she added. This surprised me, but not as much as I thought. Don't start me off, I said. After a moment of silence, she spoke in a low and decisive tone. Dave, we need revenge. I needed to know Katie was back in Chicago on business. At least that's what she said, but I didn't insist. She was honest enough to say that she had an occasional lover there, so I just assumed he would be the object of her attention while she was there. Try not to wear it out while I'm gone, she said. I know you haven't had much time, and you want to make up for lost time. I understand. I'll try, I replied. Poor girl, she said at first, and then smiled and added, happy girl. The next day, I went to work with a smile and a different attitude. My friends noticed. I slept with someone. Randy laughed at me and raised his fist in approval. Sheila, on the other hand, shook her head and gave me the middle finger when no one was looking. Later that day, I cornered her near the copier and stationery closet. What do you want? She asked. I didn't give her time to react when I kissed her. Have a night with me, she said as I pulled away. Later today? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She seemed lost in thought. Okay, long lunch, I replied. I'll tell you soon. What's gotten into you? She asked. I smiled. To hell with it. Wait for lunch, I said. Let's go now. HR will not be happy with us. We had an encounter in their conference room, and she wasn't alone. In my newfound freedom, I began an affair with a divorced mother from my child's school. Then there was a nice receptionist in the gym and a student waitress at a restaurant where I took my children. I know I overdid it at first, but I needed to make up for lost time and release the pent-up energy I had. I have to admit I enjoyed it. Nothing boosts the ego like a new conquest. But since it was just physical without much emotional connection, the aftertaste was disappointing. I felt empty because, having experienced intimacy, I missed the deeper connection while enjoying the physical aspect. It bothered me that I missed her. What troubled me was what I heard on the recordings, a conversation between Lisa and Eric about their time in my house. If she did this, and I had proof that she brought him there, it would be useful as a bargaining chip, not only for our inevitable confrontation but also for the upcoming dispute over child custody rights. I noted down what tape it was on, recalling it was after their first round of fun, and they were enjoying the aftermath on the bed. So this Wednesday again at your place before you leave for work? Yes, she answered. Be there at 10. David has his weekly meeting with his boss at that time, and he never misses it. We'll have 2 hours before I start getting ready for work, so we should be safe. I love being with you in your room, Eric said. I told you that in marriage there is a special thrill, didn't I? You were preaching to an already converted, Lisa replied. This last year, they called each other by their first names. Gone were the days when she called him sir. The dominant submissive aspect of their relationship was just a highlight they explored, but not always. Lisa became attached to her boss, just as he became attached to her. You don't share such an experience with someone for 5 years without forming some sort of attachment. The Police song came to mind, when you realize your servant has become your master. How appropriate. So it was a Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. After I left for work, I smiled to myself and began my plan. Logging into Amazon, I ordered cameras with Bluetooth and audio, paying extra for next-day delivery. When they arrived at my office in Aberton, I took them home and installed them in every room of our house. I spent a small fortune, but by this point, I could afford it, figuring the action would take place there. I splurged on cameras in the bedroom, installing 5 that were motion-activated and connected to the internet on my phone, just like others in the house, along with cameras at the front and back doors. When Wednesday arrived, it was difficult to concentrate on the meeting. When it was my turn to give my report, I did it briefly and clearly so that I could sit down without making a fool of myself, and I succeeded. I checked the recorded streams in the privacy of my office, and a little before noon, I saw my wife and her boss live on my bed. As painful as it was to hear after 5 years without intimacy, after seeing what she did and said, I was no longer shocked. In fact, I welcomed her words. Now I had proof that she brought a man into our house where our children could see her. While this was beneficial for the custody case, it was even more important for my peace of mind. Our marriage was beyond repair after this complete and total act of disrespect on her part. When I turned off the video, I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing this ordeal would soon be over. It turned out I was both right and wrong. I was about to pour myself another cup of coffee while waiting for Lisa to come home when I heard the garage door lock click. I logged out and closed my laptop, making sure it was securely locked. After the door closed, I heard her heels clicking on the tiles from the door to the stairs. As she passed the office, she looked inside. Realizing I was looking at her, she turned away. "I'll take a shower and go to bed. The kids are fine," she said. "I'm glad you asked," I replied. She paused for a moment, her back to me, then continued walking toward the bedroom. In case she left the door open, I followed her quietly, and of course, she left, allowing me to open the door. As soon as she unbuttoned her dress, she noticed me and stopped undressing, but it was too late for her phone, which I saw on her dressing table along with her purse. "Leave it alone," she hissed. "What are you doing here?" "I live here, and this is my home and bedroom," I answered, moving toward her. "And let's say I don't want you to write anything down." "What are you doing?" she said, stepping back and trying not to scream and wake the children. After making sure her phone was turned off, I put it in my back pocket. Then, closing the door, I approached her again as she tried to decide if she could get to the bathroom and closed the door before I stopped her, looking in that direction. I smiled at her as if nothing had happened. "Do you want to play a game?" I asked. "Go ahead," she said, "try it." To her credit, she tried, but I was too fast for her, and she whimpered as I caught her and pulled her back, throwing her onto the bed. "David, that's enough," she said desperately. "Why are you doing this?" "Leave me alone." "Take off that dress," I said, looking at her sternly. "No, just leave." "First of all, forget about me leaving. And second, if you don't take it off, I'll tear it up." She looked like a hunted animal at that moment, trying to decide what to do and seeing no way out. "Okay," she replied, "I'll take it off." "I don't want you to rip it." I crossed my arms and watched her closely. She finished unbuttoning her dress and slipped it off her shoulders. When she stopped, hoping I would be pleased, I motioned for her to continue. She frowned and pulled her arms out, letting the dress fall past her waist. That's when I noticed bruises on her, but I let her continue. As she lowered the dress to the floor, she realized I was looking at her bruises and gasped. "What do we have here?" "No," she gasped. "That's what you should have told the guy you were with tonight, assuming it was the same man you've been seeing since our daughter got sick." She tensed at that moment. "Please, no more," she said. "So you've got it all figured out?" I mocked. "It's a shame you didn't use it sooner. Maybe you would have realized that what you did would destroy our family." "What do you mean?" "You're the one who filed for separation and wants a divorce. I don't want our family to break up." "Family?" I chuckled. "That's a laugh." "David, please." "Oh, am I David again?" "Actually, I'm used to David now. Don't even think about trying to force yourself on me. I'd need 3 disease tests to be sure, and after what I know about what you did with your boss and others, I won't be able to be intimate with you." I saw her wince but continued, "For the record, since our lawyers agreed, I tried this during our separation. Now I know that at least 2 other women were involved. You, on the other hand, did not. What you did was despicable to me. You are despicable to me." She looked at me shyly, but I didn't see any remorse or even jealousy. It was a performance, and to be honest, I was glad. I didn't care if she felt guilt or ownership. She had shed those concepts a long time ago. "How much do you know?" she asked. "That's it," I replied. "From the very first day you and Eric had fun in his office to you being with him over and over again for 5 years. I know the names of every man you allowed to get close to you, except him. What you did with his golf buddies. Very sophisticated. He made me do it to pay off the loans, she tried to justify herself. Oh, I know how it all started, I replied. Eric was a scumbag who took advantage of a subordinate's difficult situation. The way he played you that first day made me feel sorry for you at first. What do you mean? I had to put up with him to pay off the loans. I was starting to get seriously annoyed. First of all, the loans could have been paid off earlier with the kind of money he gave you, so you wouldn't give it up. Instead, you saved most of that money without telling me about it. I thought about it after I found out you could pay off the loans and be free from him, but when you continued to work those long hours after we got the money, I realized that there was something more to it. Plus, the way you cut me off emotionally, I understood you had another lover and you voluntarily went to him. She looked at me defiantly but did not answer. Secondly, it only took him one time, 30 minutes, just half an hour, for you to forget me and become his. I saw everything. I knew that look. I saw it. It wasn't from someone who loved you but from someone who used you. I had no choice, she repeated. He may have pressured you into being with him. You gave him all of you. He had you from the very beginning. If not from the first day, then certainly from the second. It was clear that Lisa was tense, crystal clear, but she didn't deny it. How do you know all this? Then her expression changed to one of shock and fear. Wait, what do you mean? I saw his wife, Katie, install video surveillance in his office, video of every encounter you and Eric had, along with all the men he brought for you to be within his office, either on his desk or in that bedroom behind a cabinet with an office and a copy machine. Oh God, she said, covering her face with her hands. Did you see all this? Once I saw the most important parts, I stopped. Even then, I missed a lot, but like I said, I saw what mattered, not just the physical side, but your reaction to it. You enjoyed it, admit it. It's as if you were born for this lifestyle, how attached you are to it, cheating, humiliation, betrayal. But the two worst things you did were that you enjoyed it and that you joined your lover in humiliating me. I could ask you why you did it. I could ask what I did to you to deserve this, but I understand that you probably have some excuses, and it doesn't matter anymore. The important thing is that I know who you are. If I ever feel guilty about our breakup, I'll watch a video of you and Eric talking about me. Our lawyers will handle everything. Know this, I have detailed records of all the activities with the children that you missed, as well as records of you being with him or other men. I also have a video of you bringing him to our house, where our children live, during work hours and their school hours. You wouldn't have seen it. Good luck with that and the judge. Dave, please don't do this. Don't destroy us. The kids need both of us. I was here for them, Lisa, not you. I did the parenting while you were busy servicing your boss. He chose you to enjoy an intimate with a married woman. Don't fight me for custody, Lisa. I'll agree to liberal visits every week for you and the kids if you want. I'm not a monster, unless, of course, you're busy, but you'll only have them. I don't want your boss to approach them. She closed her eyes, turning her face away as her lip trembled and tears began to flow. I think she finally realized how deep she had gone. Whether it was regret or anger at being caught didn't matter anymore. The next 2 days were tense as we saw each other casually at night. I caught her looking at me, but this time, she didn't look away as usual. Do you want to know why? She asked. It's starting, I thought. Not especially at the moment. It'll either be an excuse or something to hurt me. But to show you that I don't care anymore, come on, tell me why I wasn't good enough. I can handle it. She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts, then smiled with detachment, as if reliving some memorable moment. It was nice from the beginning, she blurted out. With Eric using me, it was fantastic. A knife in the stomach. No matter how prepared I thought I was for it, it still hurt to hear it coming from her own mouth. I rolled my eyes so she wouldn't think she had offended me. Continue, I waved my hand, crossing my arms. Let it all out. When he told me about his plans for me, I was shocked that someone would do that to someone in my situation. It was cold and so selfish. Not to mention it was prettiest and against everything I thought a boss would dare to say to a female employee these days. But when I realized that I had no choice but to obey him, everything changed. How so? I didn't know if it was my curiosity or how her eyes seemed to sparkle when she remembered her feelings, but I was finally getting answers. Even if they were painful, I decided to listen in order to move on. David, there was no doubt that we needed surgery for Amber and that we needed the money. Even if we sold the house and used our 401k, it wouldn't be enough. You and I couldn't do it. Giving me the money to pay for the surgery seemed like a miracle. It was a carrot. So when he said he could pay a doctor to not operate on our daughter, she shook her head. Well, there was no choice anymore. He backed me into a corner, and he knew there was no way out of it. It was a stick. I no longer had the choice that I thought I had. She continued, some people believe that marriage takes away a woman's choice, but they are wrong. A woman can choose many things when married because our husbands, no matter how they are portrayed as man-haters, are rarely controlling. If anything, they are easy to manipulate and control by women. We ladies decide whether we will be good mothers or not, whether we will be good wives or not, whether we will be honest or truthful with our husbands, or whether we will take lovers or not. Marriage was not my trap or cage. You never made me feel controlled by patriarchy or anything like that, which is instilled on college campuses these days. But I was still trapped because of my own expectations of life. Some would say that society instilled these ideas in me. Ever since I was a child, I heard that I could do anything, be anyone, and do anything, and of course, it all sounded dizzying, but I liked it, and I chose it. In fact, the most limiting restrictions we set are ourselves. I chose my goals and decided to have it all. You were the icing on the cake. I married the most handsome man I had ever seen, a handsome man who was good in bed and loved me. Children were another part of that you can have everything mentality that I adopted until Amber got sick. Then everything fell apart. All the dreams and hopes, everything I thought I had, seemed on the verge of being lost once I reached that having it all moment. And on top of that, I had to become someone's toy. There are no words to explain to you, not just you, but to anyone, what it felt like to know that you no longer have control or choice. I sat down on the chair opposite her, wondering who this man I had married was. She was definitely not the person I knew before Eric took her away, more precisely, before she gave herself to him right after I had given in to him, thinking it would be practically non-consensual intim. I changed in a matter of seconds, giving up all the choices I had, or thought I had. Actually, there was no choice. As Eric said, Amber had to live, and as a mother, I had to do everything possible to make that happen. Dave, how could it be? You're deceiving me, I replied in disbelief. He could have sold me into slavery, forced me to have a night on the streets, sold my organs on the black market, and done things I never thought possible. Instead, he freed me. Her lips curved into a slight smile, first to herself and then to me. He freed me from all ideas and beliefs. He freed me from stress, choice, and the possibility of failure and consequences. He took it all away. The price for saving Amber's life was that he gained control over my body. You're confused, I replied. Eric has brainwashed you. I thought so too, at first, she said, looking at me again with the same smile. It wasn't a smirk or a condescending smile, it was a smile I had seen before, the smile of someone who knows something I didn't. My mother had that smile the day I told her something she thought was stupid, but I thought was true. I don't remember what it was, but at that moment, Lisa let me know that she had reached her peak and seen the light, but not me. Eric just opened the door to this new world and new life for me. At that moment, I understood and became convinced that Eric would not break his promise, and he never did. When the first operation failed, it was he who found another doctor to help. He is the one who not only paid the additional expenses but also freed me from having to pay them back because by that time, Eric was as attached to me as I was to him. You look at me in disbelief, she continued. You see, our deal was clear and concise. I would be his concubine, his toy, in exchange for Eric saving our girl. We both know you couldn't do what he did, David. He may have been the one who made that dirty proposition to me, but I never had a choice. Dave, I know it hurts you, but at that moment, you and I ceased to exist as a couple. You couldn't save our child, all you could do was helplessly watch her fate from the sidelines. Eric had the power to give her a chance at life, and when it came to choosing, there was no doubt. I know this hurts you, Dave, because I know how much you love our children. If you had to cut out your heart to save one of them, I know you would. You would steal and kill for them, and if the choice was to leave me for this, you would throw me overboard to the sharks. Don't shake your head, I know you would. But that's not what Amber needed. She needed what Eric could provide, and you couldn't. As a parent, whose concern for the child is more important than your own ego, you would have fallen to your knees and done unimaginable things if he asked you. Not me. She looked at me sympathetically and nodded. But because he didn't ask, I had to obey and do what he wanted. If you're looking for repentance from me, you won't find it, David. I was backed into a corner, and I would do it again if I had to. But there's another part that I talked about before, and it ties into your question of why I liked it and why I gave Eric the satisfaction of knowing that I liked it. You deserve an answer, but there's no short answer, I'm afraid. There were 4 periods in my relationship with him after this all started, and each of them brought different emotions and awakenings. The first stage began as soon as I walked into his office 5 years ago. As he spoke, I was so shocked by the value of his help that I could not believe it was true. As he continued, I realized that the situation was not only real but also inevitable. Deep in the back of my mind, I knew where this was going. Instinctively, I reacted like the spoiled, successful woman I was before the diagnosis. I was still living the illusion of female power. She shook her head and grinned mockingly. I told him no, and he was going to throw me out of his office, fire me, and kick me out of the building. When he started to turn his back, I asked, no, I begged him to let me submit to him. Yes, let me. My submission to Eric didn't start after Intim, it started before. Knight was just sealing the deal, a deal I couldn't refuse. I knew it even before I told him that I was submitting to him. Before I said no, he almost threw me out. At first, I didn't want to admit it to myself, but the reality is that I obeyed when I asked another man to be my benefactor and protector. I could have told him to go to hell, but poor Amber would have died, and we would have had to mourn her. I was shocked that she would talk about our girl in such indifferent terms. She must have noticed it on my face because she pursed her lips and grinned. Oh yes, David, we're back at it again. I know what pisses you off. In choosing to save Amber, I sacrificed my marital virtue and your ego. My marital fidelity was mine to give, but your ego was not. To protect it for you, I would have had to sacrifice our daughter. Sorry, David. She shook her head at me, but our daughter's life was more important. I tried to protect that by hiding the truth from her. I knew most of my extramarital affairs took place on BCE territory, where you had no access. No one there knew that my office had a door to Eric's office, so you wouldn't know. But I found out, I replied, trying to pull myself together. I felt numb from everything Lisa said, but her frankness made me listen. I deserved to know, no matter how terrible it was. Only by chance, because there was surveillance that even Eric didn't know about, did I discover the truth. If it hadn't been there, you would still think that I was engrossed in work. But there was also your personal inadequacy that you faced. Please don't deny it, David, you knew you were not able to save our daughter, but my company could and did. I saw it. The thing is, David, you're right to some extent. Although I chose to be with Eric to save Amber, I didn't truly commit to him until he forced me to. What I saw in him was a man who had the power to provide for our children in ways you could not. His authority, wealth, and confidence were, and remain, an endless attraction. I know it hurts you, but it's the truth. It doesn't matter that Eric is also handsome and fit, the experience was exhilarating, and yes, I enjoyed it all. I can see that you don't believe it. Well, let me ask you a question. You say you had intimate moments recently. How did it feel knowing you were still married? And don't tell me a lawyer's advice about intimacy during separation made it enjoyable. That's how bodies react. And while we're at it, that rule applies to me now, but that incident you did earlier was borderline inappropriate. Don't ever try that again. If you want intimacy, just say it, don't hold your breath. I snapped back. She laughed at that and then simply smiled and nodded. Anyway, so the day I talked to you about my new job, I was already involved with him, I just didn't know how much yet. I still had this illusion that I could manage both of you, that somehow we could maintain some semblance of marriage. But when I went to work and was with the boss, all of that went out the window when Amber's condition worsened and she needed a second operation. You were devastated and helpless. Instead, I couldn't wait to tell Eric about it and ask him for help. The assistance Eric provided was immediate. Later that day, I thanked him, grateful that he existed and that I had made the right choice, no matter how cold he was that first day. He was there when I needed him. With that last phrase, she cut me to the core. I spent 5 years looking after our children while she was unfaithful. I knew your heart grew cold, Lisa, but the fact that you were telling me this is a new test for you. You wanted to know so you could move on, didn't you? Was her answer. You needed honesty, right? Did you want me to grovel and tell you nonsense like it wasn't what it seemed? She raised an eyebrow at me as I forced myself to calm down. When I did, she continued, and this was the second stage of my relationship with him. I didn't love Eric, but I was in awe of his abilities and presence. Loving a person like him is impossible. I had this with you before Amber got sick. What happened made me realize that I would never have this again, at least not after I betrayed you over and over again. Every day I may have humiliated myself, but I still have a little conscience left. That's why I avoided closeness with you afterward. It was a reminder of our past that will never return. Why didn't you talk to me? Oh, David, seriously, what would this conversation be like? Honey, do we need to talk? I had to be with my boss for the money we need for our daughter's surgery. By the way, am I now his work and personal woman? Are you serious? If I did something like that, you'd run away. And I need you to watch the kids at night, nanny. I snapped. You only saw me as your nanny. No, David, I have never doubted that you are the only person I can trust with our children while I work. Mrs. Bronsky is the nanny. She just looks after them at night or for a few hours when we are not home. You are their father. You love them and will always love them. Knowing that you would be home to look after them made my life easier. It could be worse. What do you mean? Finding out why Eric decided not to humiliate you marked the beginning of the third stage of my relationship with him. You don't think it was humiliating for him to be involved with my wife every day? You know this now, but I never planned for you to find out. I did my best to make sure Eric didn't know this. You know what a cuckold is, don't you? What? Yes, I know, a guy whose wife cheats on him. I answered using the standard definition for most people. That's an old opinion, she said, waving what I described away. It's a disdain for men that needs to be redefined. A cuckold these days is a guy who willingly watches his wife be with others and approves of it. They often convince their wives to do this and arrange for it. What does this have to do with our situation? I once told Eric that he was cruel. After he corrected me, he said that I was wrong. Cruelty would be bringing you to a meeting on the first day and forcing you to agree to the terms he gave me, making you watch. She was waiting for my reaction. I would have started to protest, but she interrupted, saying, "You wouldn't have done anything, David." If he had done that, there would have been security outside, just like when he laid out his terms to me on the first day. If you refused, they would tie you to a chair and force you to watch. But listen, David, he told me that although it would be an ego boost for him to see me humiliated, he decided not to do it for some reason. Eric did some checking on who you are. He told me that he was convinced you, like me, would rather save our daughter's life than your ego. If you had agreed to watch him desecrate me, you would have been completely useless as a father to your children. How nice of him. Maybe I should send him a thank you note attached to your body. Nice touch, David, but not necessary. But let's get back to business. Eric had a selfish reason for not doing this. He knew that turning me into his prostitute was enough stress for me that I could handle. This meant that you had to not know what I was doing so that you could raise the children and take care of them. I knew the children were in good hands. What he didn't count on was my inability to have an intimate with him and then come home and do it with you. He wanted me to stay married to you and on good terms. He encouraged me to have a night with you, but I had a problem with it. Give me a few minutes, I said. I need to use the bathroom. Sure, I'll take a shower if that's okay, and I'll meet you downstairs in the bathroom. I started crying like a baby, realizing how long ago and how my marriage had broken down. My wife sacrificed this at the altar of parenthood. She was right. My ego made me jealous and angry, but I knew she did what she thought was right at that moment. Realizing this, I thought about myself. Would I give in and let him take my wife before my eyes? Would I agree to his deal? Just the thought of it made me want to puke, not just the image of it, but the reluctant acceptance of it for the sake of my daughter's life, and that it would destroy me in the process. I managed to pull myself together when I heard the shower stop in the master bedroom. Lisa had finished and would be out soon. Now there was no doubt that I would listen to the rest of her story. After washing my face and quickly brushing my teeth, I exited the family bathroom that my children used. I quickly checked on my son, Kyle, and then headed to my daughter's room. I don't neglect my son, but everyone knows I favor Amber. Even Kyle says he understands. You almost lost her, Dad, he told me one night as she slept on the couch and we played video games. I understand that you love her more. I don't love her anymore, Kyle, I corrected him. I love her differently, but you're right. Sometimes I look at her and think it's a miracle she's here. Am I a miracle? Kyle asked. Yes, it is. You both are a miracle. I came back and kissed my sleeping son, as I had done before, and vowed to continue to show him my love until the day I died. I then walked down the hall to our daughter's room and opened the half-open door. Next to her bed, watching her breathe in her sleep, stood my wife, Lisa, now in a robe. This evening was the longest we had talked and spent together as a family in a long time. I looked at this stranger in my daughter's room and wondered if I had ever known her. Perhaps we got married too young. Did she have some dark secret that I missed? Had she cheated on me before, and I never put two and two together? These thoughts occur not only in men but also in women whose spouses cheat. But as I looked at her over our daughter, I realized that she had made her choice, and I was surprised that I didn't judge her for submitting intimacy to Eric. Wise that first day, he put her in an impossible position where refusal meant the probable death of our girl. Lisa was right, we had exhausted all possibilities of getting money ourselves. Our parents didn't have that kind of money, and neither did my sister after her divorce. We now had enough money, but that didn't fix all the pain Eric had caused our marriage. With my wife's help, I stood next to Lisa, crossing my arms over my chest, keeping my distance from her. My poor sleeping girl had no idea what had happened to keep her alive and what price her parents paid for her precious life. As Lisa reached over to straighten her blanket, I left the room and headed to the kitchen for a bottle of water. When she came into the kitchen and sat down, I handed her my bottle and took another, then I sat down opposite her. When I opened my mouth to speak, she raised her hand. Can I finish what I started telling you? Your turn, I said, feeling stupid for using a phrase I'd heard my grandfather say countless times. He explained to me that it had to do with telephone booths and the fact that you had to put in a coin to make a call. I was going to tell you, she said, screwing the cap on the bottle, why I stopped having a night with you. Yes, I answered, or as you've said many times over the years. No, not today, she continued, ignoring my joke. I stopped having intimate with you for a reason. It's one thing to have intimate with another man behind your back, but it's another thing to come home and give you the dirty leftovers. That must be the explanation, she hissed back. Just listen, Dave. I ignored her and looked at her, waiting for her to strike me again. The more she talked, the worse it got, and the more I realized we were done. Like I said, Eric wanted our marriage to continue. He thought it would be good for me to keep in touch with you at home, but listen. I interrupted her. You explained how night with him was better than night with me and how now you are his submissive. Whatever it is, I get it. If you need to talk it out and free yourself from guilt or lack thereof, see a psychologist. David, I don't care. Eric and everything you did. I don't give a damn how you felt after you decided he was the man. Before I won the lottery, I was stupid enough to think that you and I had a chance to make things right. I know it's stupid and naive of me, but I thought so. As soon as I saw your reaction that day, I knew that it was all over. I watched the video, and it was just the nail in the coffin. If I need to know how you felt during those times, I can rewatch them or watch the ones I missed. So if you don't have anything constructive, let's get to what I need to say. She looked at me for a few seconds, but I no longer knew who this person was and no longer cared. For the sake of the kids, Dave, we should stay together until they're older. If you want, We can make a post-nuptial agreement that allows us to stay here with the kids. Let's leave it at that, and you can go on dates whenever you want." "No," I said. "That ship has sailed. I told you that you should move into an apartment and we should end this farce. You said you've changed and are living a new life. Well, I want a new life too without having to see your smug face. Dave, I don't want to leave. I want us to." "What do you want us to do, Lisa? Pretend to be a normal couple sleeping in separate rooms? How long do you think the kids won't notice? The kids talk at school and they find out from other kids that parents aren't together. Then we'll sleep together," she answered. "That's right," I replied. "You, me, and traces of night with Eric or whoever he forced to have intimate with you this evening. You're crazy. I won't sleep next to you once the separation is over. You don't belong in this house. And if he told you he would hire expensive lawyers, he needs to check who controls his company. It's Mrs. Wise, and she hired every lawyer worth her salt to be on my side." "Wow," she said in a quiet tone, pretending to be shocked. "Katie will do this for you. She did this before. She'll be leaving soon and going back to her boyfriend in Chicago." "It's her choice," I replied. "There are other fish in the sea. I'm still too young to catch other fish, and you can continue your games with your Nazi boyfriend." "He's Austrian," Lisa tried to correct me. "Where Hitler comes from," I reminded her. "I thought he was German." "Call your college and ask for a refund," I said as I stood up. "I'm going to bed. Your phone is on your dresser. Now you can call your master and give him a report." Lisa was a shining example of the fact that a high IQ does not compensate for incomplete education. As soon as I was in my room, I texted Katie. We talked. She didn't deny anything and was proud of everything she did. "Katie, are you okay?" "I will." "How did things go for you?" "Katie, I'll send you a photo. Log into my secure server from your computer. Give me a couple of minutes." A few seconds later, I was downstairs in the office opening my laptop. I logged in and accessed Katie's photo server. Of course, she sent me a photo of what she was doing there. I giggled, then laughed as I picked up the phone and called the man's wife. She answered immediately. "Remind me never to cross paths with you," I said jokingly. "Unlike my idiot soon-to-be ex-husband, you're not stupid. So are you coming over tonight or putting it off until tomorrow?" "Tomorrow morning," I asked, catching myself with too much enthusiasm. "Yes, I'm back. I'm finishing up business in Chicago and moved here for good. There are problems at BCE that I need to solve personally. I'll tell you more tomorrow." After thinking about it, I said, "I'm tired from everything I had to do today and from the flight. For what I'm planning, I need to be fresh." "And you?" "Yes, me too. Let's do it in the morning." I agreed. "I need to sleep for my big role." "Mrs. Demo, what's next?" "Quotes from Casablanca?" "This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship," she said. "Beautiful friendship, dumbass," Katie laughed, correcting me. "See you tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning." "I'll be ready." "Good night, Felicia," I said, and as I pressed the end call button on my cell phone, I heard her laugh. I smiled, surprised at how Katie's return to town made me feel. The next day at 9:55 a.m., I was at the mansion. I rolled down the driver's window and pressed the button at the gate. There must have been a security camera there because the gate opened before I could introduce myself. Driving inside, I noticed the gatehouse covered in foliage, making it almost invisible from the street. The guard waved me through to the long road leading to the main mansion. For a moment, I thought I was in Europe, looking at the castle-like stone walls and towers, but without a moat and drawbridge. Instead, there was a sleek modern double door of polished wood and stained glass that looked as expensive as my car. I had some money now after winning the lottery, but the place was probably worth 10 times my entire fortune, which I had to share with Lisa. Then I realized how rich Katie and her family were. They had a mansion in Illinois but kept this one as a spare for visits, along with a family ranch, a condominium in New York overlooking the park, a yacht in the Mediterranean, a private jet, and God knows what else. My initial analysis of her was correct. Power and money were part of who she was, not just something she had or inherited when her father died. There were many times I wondered why Katie would spend time with me of all people. She should have known that she was much higher in status than I was. I mean, she was beautiful on the outside, but there were women with less money and connections who mattered more, so why? In a sense, she was right. We were connected because our spouses were having relationships behind our backs. I assumed that once she got her revenge by confronting her husband about his affair, she and I would be done. Until then, I enjoyed Katie Sanchez's company and was grateful for it, but there was more to it than just that. What exactly? Why was I glad she came back? I had no shortage of female company since Katie left. However, meetings with Sheila and the others were less frequent and less enjoyable. The thrill of forbidden interactions gradually faded away. In fact, I canceled a date with Sheila and turned down her invitations twice this week. I think she understood and didn't mind. These things happen, right? As for the others, I know it sounds corny, but they were just fleeting connections, nothing more. I have to admit I found as much pleasure in communicating with Katie Sanchez as I did in my previous encounters with her, and I even looked forward to it. However, all the issues with my wife remained unresolved and were still too fresh. Everything was difficult. While these thoughts were running through my head, the door opened. I expected to see the butler who would open the door and announce me to the lady of the house. Instead, I was greeted by Katie herself. "Hey, handsome," she said, grabbing me by the shirt and pulling me inside before I could say anything. I shook my head in disbelief when she kissed me. "Did you miss me?" she asked. "Honestly, yes. Don't let it get to your head, but I missed you too. Is everything okay in Chicago?" I asked politely. "Just business matters, but we have business to do here." I thought we were going up to her bedroom, but instead, she led me to the elevator, which took us down what I thought was 5 floors. "Where are we going?" "To my underground lair," she answered with a funny, villainous laugh. "I feel used," I replied. She led me through the door into a large room. I had never seen a round bed except in movies. "Is this a bunker for the apocalypse?" I asked with a slight smile. She stopped to look at me and then motioned for me to sit next to her on a small sofa designed for 2. "This is a private place that few people know about. This part of the mansion was built in the late 50s during the Cold War, so the owners built an expensive underground shelter for their family. It was closed for decades after the early 70s. My father then bought the estate and had it renovated after this place was discovered. This is unlike any bunker I've ever seen." "No, it's not, but it's very, very private," Katie said, standing up. "Whatever suits us for today's business." I looked at her in confusion as she walked towards the curtains, pushing them aside. She opened a metal double door, which she quickly unlocked with a key. "I might need your help," she said, beckoning me over. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined what was inside, more precisely, whom. In the center of the empty room was a man tied to a wheelchair. The man was none other than Eric Wise. When he realized who I was, he tried to break free from his bonds and groaned, trying to speak. Of course, he succeeded in neither, much to his wife's delight. "Poor Eric," said Katie mockingly. "Help me move him into the bedroom, Dave, please." I didn't know what was on her mind and wanted to ask, but it was clear from the look on her face that this did not bode well for her husband and my wife's former boss. So I pushed his wheelchair out of that room and into the master bedroom. "This will do," she pointed to the end of the bed. "And be kind, Dave, take off your clothes." When I placed his chair where she asked, I leaned toward Eric's ear. "After she finishes what she has planned, you and I have our own scores to settle, idiot. Remember that." "My father found this place. It had been abandoned for a while," Katie said, ignoring Bing. Eric, obviously, the previous owner, had a bondage addiction that was a little on the extreme side. There were a lot of toys and bondage devices in the collection that are now in storage, and they still work. Look how he's chained to that chair. By this time, I had already changed into something comfortable, as had Katie. "So what's the plan?" I asked. She whispered to me, "This is my revenge, and I hope yours." She then turned and sat on the edge of the bed facing her husband. "You realize that you and I are finished, Eric, don't you?" He tried to say something, but the look in his eyes said more. By this point, even an idiot would have realized what was going on. Calm down, Eric. I checked this place, and unlike your office, there are no cameras here. Forget about any possibility of revenge after tonight or ever being close enough to hurt me or David and his family. As you know, I'm damn rich, and I'll do anything to make sure we're well guarded. I've known for a long time that you were cheating on me. After all, people of our status rarely remain faithful to their spouses as long as you had. It suited me, but what you did to Dave's wife was disgusting, even for you. I'm wondering if you tried this trick with other women or if Lisa Henderson was the first one you manipulated into being your pawn. Either way, this is not going to end well for you. You thought you were so smart, didn't you? You're probably thinking that even if we get divorced, which we will, you'll still have a majority of BCE shares and remain in your position. That's not entirely true. Remember a few years ago when you took the company public to attract capital for growth? Eric was silent at this point. He was probably wondering where this conversation was going, and to be honest, so was I. Well, when you did that, you were left with a majority share of the shares, which gave you control. But my family bought the rest. Since my family gave you BCE during our marriage, that makes half of your shares mine now. I know that I will lose a lot when we divide our assets, but you will no longer be the owner of BCE and will not be its CEO. So, you're probably wondering what's going on here. Why the bedroom? Why is my lover here? And why are you without anything? Well, I love having intimate moments in bedrooms. I just don't involve myself with other people's spouses in their homes when those spouses are at work. I would never take parents whose children are dying and turn them into my pawns, and I would never consider paying a doctor not to perform an operation, as you threatened Dave's wife. What kind of sick person does that? But since you love the thrill so much, let's see how much you enjoy watching the man whose wife you betrayed interact with your wife. And yes, he has already been with me, and that was wonderful. Eric's eyes widened. Now he guessed what her plan was, and so did I. The next thing that happened was revenge in the highest quality. Katie and I did everything provocative we could think of in front of an angry Eric. From his position at the foot of the bed, he had front row seats to this performance. You know, Eric, she hissed at him, he's better than you. Better than you ever were with me. Dave is the perfect lover for me, just right. But you know what makes him better? He never hurts me. I plan to be with him as much as he allows, and I will make you watch. You're disgusting, I said, shaking my head with a grin. But you can't help it, can you? For some reason, I wanted him to answer. You made me do it, he replied. You're the last one who can claim to be a victim of coercion, Eric, I spat back. You are a disgusting person. There's one funny thing I've noticed about people like you. Give them the ability to bully and use others, and they will do it. Many men have power but do not abuse it, but people like Eric simply cannot resist. And like school bullies, when confronted, they cower and retreat like cowards. I decided to test this by freeing him from his shackles. What are you doing? Katie asked, sitting up. Eric, I said, looking at him menacingly, sit here like a good boy and watch me with your wife. But until we're done, you'll sit here and watch. I turned around as he started to get up. If you even think about attacking me, I will beat you to a pulp. Stop looking at me with defiance, otherwise, I will beat you just for fun. If you've ever seen scoundrels like him cower like cowards, it's priceless. He didn't leave. My biggest concern in divorcing my wife, Lisa, was the children. I didn't want them to lose their mother, but she and I could no longer live together. Our relationship as husband and wife ended a long time ago. Now we simply coexisted, just like the last 5 years. However, the children were still young. Kyle was 10 and Amber was 8. They were still at a tender age. I wondered how they would cope and what kind of mark it would leave on them. But one day, when I was preparing breakfast for them, they let me know how wrong I was to worry about them. Where's Mommy this time? Amber asked. Not with us, that's for sure, Kyle replied. I said nothing. Jenny Kirby from school said her mom has a boyfriend. Isn't she married? Asked Kyle. That doesn't stop her, Amber said. Dad, do all moms have boyfriends when they're married? Before I could respond, Kyle spoke up. Dad, You know Mom has a boyfriend, right? Why do you think so? I asked. Think about it, Dad. She's never here. And even after winning the lottery, she continued to work. She didn't have to do that. And even after she left that company, she still spends most of her time away from the US. I looked at both of them, noticing that they were waiting for my answer. If my mom and I got divorced and you only saw her on weekends, would that be okay with you? We barely see her anyway, Amber answered, looking at her food. Kyle nodded as he listened to his sister. He just watched as Amber came and sat on my lap. I'd be okay with that, Dad, he finally said. I filed divorce papers with Lisa this week. She signed them and moved into a condo near us. At the end of the week, we helped her move into an apartment nearby. On the way home from school, the children could walk there if they wanted. Life went on for me and the children, only a little differently. Lisa did not fight for child custody or the divorce. She had half the lottery winnings and half of our assets, including our old house, which I put on the market. I never wanted to sleep in that bedroom again, not after Eric Wise was there and had been with her. We bought another house down the street. It was a new start for us. I saw Lisa occasionally at children's events from afar. She stayed away from me, and I stayed away from her too. Our only communication was about what we needed to know regarding the children and vice versa. Over time, the children told me that she had started dating. I chuckled because she had cheated for 5 years. I could not imagine that Lisa would remain faithful. As for why she started dating, it became obvious when I learned that Eric had been fired from BCE Systems and had returned to Europe to live off the family fortune. Since he was the only surviving son, his sister ran the show, leaving him time to pursue married women or whatever else he was doing. Lisa asked him to move to Europe with her, but apparently the thrill was gone. She went to visit him, and her apartment was vacated the day before her arrival. So, that's it, Lisa moved on, and so did I. You may ask why I was gentle with her. Why didn't I sell her to African slave traders or something so she could work on the streets of Philadelphia? One reason, in her crazy way, Lisa sacrificed herself to save our daughter, nothing more. Now, about Katie. Kathy Sanchez, as she now used her last name again, is hard to explain. This woman and I developed a strange but comfortable relationship. Neither of us mentioned exclusivity or commitment, but she finally moved in with us. She spent all her evenings with the children and me. Even with her mansion and all her rich friends, she chose us over them. I never asked her for this, it just happened. She and I had just flown in from Montreal on her private jet. We spent the weekend together while Lisa was with the kids. We said goodbye, kissing openly, as her limousine dropped me off. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Katie standing on the porch with 2 pieces of luggage. My friend's van was parked at the side of the road. Dave, she asked, can I stay with you guys for a few days? 2 years later, she is still living with us. I can only say one thing, we are comfortable with each other. We are an unlikely unmarried couple. All her life, she had never been without material things, but she never had one thing, the closeness of family. She had nannies and was sent to boarding school and then to college. Her parents loved her in their own way but never gave her the time she needed. Their schedule was always filled with business meetings, parties, and trips. It's funny how everyone thinks Latino families focus a lot on the family aspect, not hers. So, at 40 years old, Katie Sanchez found what she was missing in her life, and I found a person with whom I felt comfortable. We didn't have a marriage to tie us together, but over time, we found in each other that special connection we most dream of but never find. I'll tell you how I know. It doesn't matter where Katie and I are, whether it's on the beach, in a restaurant, on the couch, on a plane, or at a ball game, she wraps her arm around me and rests her head on my shoulder. I've heard this saying for a long time, where you find happiness, hold on to it. We ran into Eric in Paris a year ago. He was having lunch at the same restaurant as us with a dark-skinned woman with dyed blonde hair. He avoided my gaze, but Katie leaned over as we passed their table and spoke loud enough to be heard, "Hello." The look on his face was priceless. A week later, while we were in Rome, the news appeared about Eric von Wise. His BMW 8 Series convertible was found empty on the side of the road in Strasbourg. There were rumors that the woman he photographed in Paris was married to an angry Arab prince. Karma. What do you think of the second part of this storyline? In my opinion, it was quite interesting as the essence of the story is revealed to a greater extent here. What's your reaction? Write in the comments. See you in the comments.